All right, so I'm going to get started. I know some people are still walking in. I think my timer has started, so let's get going. So my name is Mike Sivan, and I am a data and analytics leader at Booz Allen Hamilton. All right, that was, yes, thank you. Thank you. So for those that aren't familiar with Booz Allen, we're a fairly large consulting company, about 27,000 people. And we do strategy and technology consulting all around the world with government clients, commercial clients, public sector clients, all sorts of clients. And on a more personal note, I am really excited to be here today. This is my fourth Tableau conference, and ever since I went for the first time in 2016, I've really wanted to be up here, wanted to give a talk. So I wanted to thank Tableau and thank you all for being here, and really excited to tell you guys our story. And so first, before we get into it, we're going to do a quick poll. So for those that work with me know I'm pretty obsessed with my dog. So I wanted to bring it with me. My wife said the 5-hour flight would probably not be good, so this is the next best thing. So quick poll. In the audience, how many of you work in kind of corporate IT, let's say? Corporate data or just a corporate department? Okay, fair amount. And how many of you would put yourselves more on the business side where you're consuming what those corporate folks deliver and create? So like data analysts, let's say. Okay, maybe like half and half or so. So that's good. So we have both folks or both sides represented here. So last question, how many people think that relationship between those two sides is sometimes maybe a little strained, a little difficult? Okay, no one raised their hand. No, just kidding. Everybody raised their hand, I think. So right from the keynote this morning, if I learned two things, one of them is that there is that little bit of strain, and the other one is that Mark Benioff does a really sick dolphin impression, apparently. So that was good. So, when I think about this tension that exists, a quote comes to mind. And that quote's, what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? That's what I think about, right? So we've got your unstoppable force, immovable object. What happens when they meet? In this case, we're talking about the business versus corporate IT. Or more specifically, in my case, and what this story is going to be about, is really more about data analysts on the business side and corporate BI, corporate business intelligence. So I'm going to tell you the story of kind of how I came to be up here and how Booz Allen has handled this tension. And to do that, I think first we should meet the two sides, right? So the analysts, let's kind of talk about them for a minute. So typically these are smaller teams. They're very tactical, very capable. This is like where your data scientists will sit and your data analyst and the business. And they rely really heavily on the corporate team. The challenge is that they really like to hypothesize and run experiments. They don't always know what they're looking for. And they're focused on their own business unit's tasks. They're not really looking at the company writ large. On the opposite side, we have our corporate BI team, right? This is not our team. This is a really good stock imagery site that I hopefully have the rights to use all of these things. But so the corporate team, right, their scope is really different. They are responsible for running entire environments for a whole company. For us, this includes our business requirements analysts, our DBAs, our data modelers, our report writers, our Tableau dashboard developers. Data stewards are involved here as well. And we're a public company, right? So we're responsible, this team's responsible for both internal and external reporting. So they're very subject to things like audit, and compliance is really, really big on the list of priorities for them. And so in this talk, we'll look at that dynamic and we'll look at the ecosystem. I picked a few kind of analyst teams across our firm, and in the middle we have this corporate BI team, and everyone's dependent on them. And so first, we'll talk about client service analysts. So kind of backing up a little bit about Booz Allen, right? Our main product is we deliver client service hours to our customers. So we have lots of projects doing that. Those projects all roll up into different programs and all roll up into portfolios. And this is, a lot of times, these portfolios are hundreds of millions of dollars. And they have leaders, right? And those leaders have targets and they have KPIs that they're interested in. And they sometimes want a little bit more, or maybe different things than are made available by the corporate BI team in standard reporting, right? So I was on one of these teams, and at the time we were implementing a data and analytics solution for our clients, and my leadership internally kind of came to us and said, hey, we want something different than what we're getting from the corporate teams. And so why does that exist? Why is it hard to do that for those teams? I think if we look at sort of, I don't even know, I guess you guys can see. If we look at the stack of kind of data flow and technology that exists for us and also any traditional BI sort of implementation, we have a whole bunch of line of business systems, right? So anything like expense reports, or when Booz Allen buys stuff, or when we bill our clients, when we do HR moves, all of that's captured in different IT systems. Those IT systems create data. That data flows from those systems into the data warehouse. And that's kind of when that corporate team gets their hands on it, right? So they're able to combine this data in different ways. They're able to create reports. And there's a select group of power users that typically help that team do that work, help translate the business requirements for them, and actually use the BI tools. Now, that's everything that's on top, right? So at the bottom, it's kind of weird for me to not look at what you're looking at. At the bottom, you have the consumers. Oh, wow, is there a closed captioning going on? That's really cool. Okay, cool. So the consumers at the bottom. Okay, now we're just gonna do this. How is this working? This is amazing. The power of artificial intelligence, probably. All right, so the consumers at the bottom, typically in this kind of a model, they're getting pre-created BI products sent to them. So whether it's a PDF or Excel document, something like that, that's what's getting to them. And I'm not saying that this is a bad model, right? This model works. And this model works especially if things are repeatable and consistent. It's focused really on compliance. And the development process is very linear and it's controlled. Like the corporate teams knows what's being developed and what's going on, what's going out to the company. The problem though is this middle layer, right? And this is kind of what we've called the data firewall. And it's very similar to a computer firewall, right? So there's some, it slows down the flow of information. It'll block some information altogether from getting through. It'll limit certain users from getting on. And with all that, it helps the compliance side of things, but doesn't really help agility, right? So for people that want to make quick changes, for people that don't really know what they're looking for, like those analysts, it's hard for them to work in this kind of a system. And just as a quick example, we're not going to look at this whole diagram, but looking at our process for, let's say, getting a new report or getting a change, we're looking at 11 workflow steps, 9 different people handing things off to each other. It's very serial and linear, and a slow feedback loop. So by the time you get to step 11, where that business leader or that analyst, like, okay, let me look at what I asked for, things might have changed, they might not need that anymore, or they might not get exactly what they want, and then they have to go through the whole thing again. So it doesn't really work well. So this is where our leadership basically said, hey, we've got to do better. We're doing better for our clients. Can we eat our own dog food and do better for ourselves? So my team had this challenge, and we took the tool that we were using to help our clients and started using it internally. And it enabled us to build our own logic It enabled us to create our own data models. We weren't only reliant on the way that the corporate team was putting things together. And we could build these interactive dashboards that our leaders really liked. And I think, oh, I'm one behind. And I think you guys all know where this is going. That tool was, QlikView. Whoops. So that's true. For a number of years before coming over to the Tableau side, implemented QlikView, both for our clients and internally at Booz Allen. And QlikView was a good tool. It really did enable us to do what we needed to do. The problem is that this is a localized implementation. So we didn't have automated data feeds. We couldn't always rely on that data. We had to do a lot of manual work to make that happen. So once we got enough senior leaders behind us, this client service team that I was on went to the corporate team and said, hey, you're going to install QlikView for the whole firm now. And it happened. So we were actually able to effect this change in corporate, and we helped to get QlikView installed in the corporate environment. We helped get people trained. We moved some people over from our team onto the corporate team, and we started to see some results, right? So we took things in our corporate reporting that looked like this, a lot of static documents and PDFs and things like that, and we changed them into things that look like this. Ooh, look at those pie charts, right? So this was QlikView, and we built a number of corporately developed, with that client team's help, tools. And we thought that we were in heaven, right? We had now the reliable data pipelines from the corporate team hooked up to a modern tool at the top for operational dashboards. And we really thought that this was going to take off, that it wasn't just going to make our client analyst team happy, but it was going to spread across the whole firm. And that's it. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you all. No, that's not the end. If that was the end, it would be really short, and I'm probably at the wrong conference. What we found was that there were some issues. And of course, right around that time, actually at a Qlik conference, I was recruited to come in and lead the corporate team now. So I jumped from that client team to the corporate team that was now stuck with QlikView. So hold on one second here. All right, so I'm now corporate team. Yeah. Okay. So I've got a new hat on or a new jacket on, and I have new responsibilities on this corporate team. So why wasn't this quite what we were expecting? Well, the expectation was this: huge party, everyone loves QlikView, everyone's coming in, using dashboards, building dashboards, all this great stuff. The reality was a little bit different. We did have some successes, but by and large, we were not seeing this adoption that we thought was going to happen. And I was like, oh, that kind of stinks. But then I was like, oh, crap, that's my problem now. So we needed to look into this a little bit further. And so that's what I started doing. And upon doing that, I noticed that although we had a new tool, we hadn't really changed our analytics model, the consumption model, to how people worked with this data. So access to data was still very difficult. QlikView, like I said, a lot of analysts just didn't really take to it. They didn't like it. So they didn't want to go in and work with it. So they kept asking us to do it. And we still had a whole bunch of legacy products that were being used. And what ended up happening with this is, an IT team's worst nightmare, is we were having a lot of shadow BI. And this was basically those analysts, that unstoppable force, right? They're going to do what they need to do. So they get their hands on data. They're going to get the tools that they want. They're going to start building things. Except now this is even worse for us. We're not delivering what they want, so that's not good. But secondly, they're going to build a whole bunch of things that we don't really have any insight into, and that's not good. And so rather than trying to shut down all this shadow BI, I wanted to take a look at what was happening in these shadows. And what we found was that although the shadows were a problem, in them there was also the solution. And specifically, we started to look at, what are people building? Why? How are they building it? And what we were finding is a lot of people were taking our outputs from our tools and even from Qlik, exporting it, and then importing it into Tableau and building Tableau dashboards from it. I'm like, okay, so there's something that people really like about Tableau, but I was sort of brought in to make Qlik work. We already have money invested in Qlik. Like, what do we do here? And for me, the thing that really motivated me is when we started to get requirements from those teams, and they came in the form of Tableau dashboards. And so what our team then did was rebuild those dashboards in QlikView, and then nobody used them. So we had a problem, clearly. And I wanted to know what is the big deal with Tableau. I was not a Tableau guy, like I said, and so I went to TC, and that was in 2016, and that's really what kicked off our transformation from then until now. So I'm going to tell you about that transformation now. Thank you very much. Next group. So first of all, the conference was amazing. I had been to a couple of conferences before. Won't name company names, although you probably know one already based on the rest of my talk. And just, it was amazing to see the passion and the energy that people really brought. People really wanted to do this work. They were really excited about the tool. We went to Devs on Stage, and people were saying, like, we can now do a new type of map, and people were applauding like, I don't know, it was like a Rihanna concert or something like that, right? Like, it was really amazing. I'm like, we have to tap into this. Like, if we fight this and try to go our own corporate way, we're losing out on so much momentum and so much power. Like, we have to harness the power and the passion of this community. And so we started down this path. So the first path was, we got to make sure that we can make Tableau do at least some, or hopefully even more, than some of our Qlik dashboards were. So we picked, and I'm looking at Matt here in the front. We were in this together for a while. We picked a pilot dashboard. It looked like this in Qlik. And this is a dashboard that helped a certain part of our organization understand their spending. Oh, and a lot of these are fuzzed out and like sanitized, and that's obvious for like sensitivity reasons, and hopefully I did enough. Marissa, I see my boss really squinting and making sure that I did enough. So we took this dashboard and we said, let's rebuild this in Tableau and see how this goes. And this is really cool because we worked with Tableau pre-sales, we worked with Tableau professional services, and also with some other companies in trying to help us do this. And what we created was a dashboard that looked like this. And this dashboard was extremely well received. It could do everything that the Qlik dashboard could do, and people really responded well to the visual aesthetics of it. And it immediately started to take off. It got a lot of usage, even in its pilot phase. So we proved that out. We said, okay, we're able to do what we were doing in Qlik. The next thing that we wanted to do is we really wanted to test out the power of this community thing. That's one of my main arguments that I was making to my boss at the time was, yes, we have some sunk costs in Qlik, right? We have some content developed, but look at all of these people out in the community. If we don't leverage what they're doing, we're gonna be behind. And so we needed a way to prove that out. And it just so happened, I don't know, serendipity or what, but I got a phone call from actually one of our leaders out in the Middle East region. And basically their request to our corporate team was, hey, please give us all of your data. We're gonna build our own BI system, thank you. And we said, whoa, hold on. Well, what are you talking about? They're like, we wanna stand up Tableau. We don't wanna use the corporate reporting anymore. And I said, this is great. This is what we want to do. This is what we wanna test. Are you willing to kind of be our guinea pigs here? And they said yes, and so over the next 4 to 6 months or so, what our corporate team did was we got a smallish server up online, and I have to say thanks to our Tableau account managers for that. I think we got one of the longest trials in history. It was like 6 or 7 months of free Tableau. They're both still with the company, so I guess that was okay. And we proved this out, and we got 20 or so data sources up online, and this team went off. They actually hired their own contractors, and they built their own dashboards, and we actually ended up reusing those data sources for other dashboards. And these data sources are kind of special, right, because they're the ones that our team builds, they're certified, we know that the data is right, and they can be used for other dashboards. So this success was hugely important, and it really lined us up to make this decision to make the switch from QlikView to Tableau. And so we did that. And it was amazing. The amount of tension that immediately dissipated between the corporate and the business teams was a lot. And people just essentially changed the way that they approached us to open arms. Like, how can we help you? We're all on the same platform. And it was a really great experience. The next thing we did was we developed our service offerings. And I'll talk about this later, but essentially our team has two main service offerings, and that's full service, which is a lot more like the traditional model where we do everything. And then there's self-service, which is when we give you data and the teams build their own dashboards. Then we had to develop new content, obviously. We had some things to replace and Qlik, et cetera. And then finally, we needed to launch the platform, marketing, letting people know it's out there, and retiring QlikView finally. And so once we did that, what we found was a model for data and analytics between sources and consumers that looked more like this. So you didn't have that kind of choke point in the middle, right? And using Tableau and a couple of other tools around it, we were able to provide. We still use the same source systems, we still have the enterprise data warehouse, but we were able to provide access a lot more directly to the consumers of the data that needed it. And they were able to build out their own content and use it themselves and also serve their customers. And so this was kind of the best of both worlds. And we saw tremendous growth from this model. So just to give you an idea, in our first year, essentially going from nothing to that first year, we onboarded 300 users onto our server for free. We developed 5 corporate dashboards, like the ones that I was showing you before. But the cool thing was that we had about 30 customer dashboards. So these are dashboards that we didn't really touch. They were developed by the community, and they're being used now. We had about 20 data sources, like I mentioned, and about 5,000 views across our platform for all that content. So not huge, but a pretty good showing, I think, for 1 year. This really proved to everyone around the firm, right, that this was a good idea. We needed to pursue this. We actually started to pay for licenses. We set things up to be more of a corporate structure. And the second and third years looked a little more like this, right? We onboarded everyone within our company has a server license now, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. About 10% of those are people that are either creating or consuming content created by those self-service users. We have about 13 or so corporate dashboards. So these are dashboards that my team creates to go out to the rest of the firm. I think more impressively, we have about 325 or so self-service customer dashboards. So these are dashboards that in the past, people may have not even gotten off the ground. They may have had to wait for a really long time. I mean, I can tell you right now, it would take my team a really long time to build 325 dashboards. So leveraging the power of the community here was huge. About 160 data sources, 850,000 total views versus that 5,000. And that's just in the past 6 months that we have the data. So really, really tremendous growth. And what I want to do for the rest of the time is really show you some examples of what that growth looked like. So starting off with self-service, right? I'm going to pick on our finance team. Our finance team, they're over here and spread out. They're a good bunch of folks, and they're some of our most prolific developers and partners in this whole journey, and it's been great working with them. So looking at what they've been able to do, and actually they just did an interview, I think, earlier this morning, which will be up online at some point, so you can hear more directly from them about their journey within our journey. So they've been able to build 17 dashboards. They've onboarded about 8 data sources. They have 751 active users that are consuming their content. And the really cool thing about this is that 579 of those are staff that normally would never really get access to this data directly. They would see it secondhand, thirdhand, and now they're experiencing it through Tableau, through these interactive dashboards. And in the past 6 months, their dashboards represent about 360,000 dashboard views out of that 850 that I quoted, so a very large majority. And I think a really impressive stat is this one. So what they've been building supplements/replaces legacy tools. And by our discussions and estimates, we've been able to replace about 90% of those legacy tools with Tableau content that folks use day to day to do their jobs on the finance team. So that's been great. And one example of one of their dashboards is what we call the current period dashboard. So I'm going to do a very high-level kind of treatment of this. But it's a dashboard that replaces a number of reports. And it really allows people to see, this is a daily dashboard, how spending is going across different parts of the company. And it goes to both analysts at a high level, but also those specific people in those specific departments so that they can see how they're doing almost real time. The other big thing about it is that it doesn't just show where they are at a point in time, it shows you trends. And that was something that was very difficult to do before. And so with looking at this dashboard, we did some analysis, and we found that it saves the average financial analyst about half an hour every day because they were compiling all this information manually. Not to mention that most of them, there's about 40 people or so doing this work, had their own way to do it. So what does that mean? That's about 100 hours overall for the firm every week. It's about 5,200 hours per year of savings. So that essentially means 2 people working almost an entire year just on creating data for this dashboard is now replaced with an automatically updating dashboard. That's been a huge boon for them, for the finance team, as well as for the whole firm. So moving on to another team, our real estate team. Obviously, real estate is a huge expense for Booz Allen, so it's something that we look at really closely. They have external tools that they use, and we're working with a lot of Excel data. They're one of our self-service customers, and they've been able to take that data, bring it together in dashboards like this one that help them identify where buildings might be over capacity or under capacity and make better leasing decisions that end up saving a lot of money as well. Another example of their creations are these dashboards that are more focused on presentations to senior leadership. So this is like a automatically updating infographic. Rather than having to recreate this stuff in PowerPoint, this is something that gets generated automatically within Tableau. And again, this is really awesome because my team wasn't really involved in creating it, right? This is stuff that's done independently using this certified data by these self-service teams. And lastly, the lower barrier to entry to really experiment that Tableau provides allows teams like theirs to do some cool stuff that they might not otherwise do. This is an example of looking at population density in certain areas to identify potential new areas for office buildings. And this may not ever make it into a corporate dashboard, but it's analysis that they're now able to do that they weren't able to do before. And capping things off, we'll look at the marketing team. So just to say, too, there are a lot of other teams. There's actually about 30 or so self-service teams that are all on our platform building these dashboards. The marketing team, again, there's a lot of SaaS tools out there that have their own proprietary data exports. They are hand jamming this stuff together. Now they're able to bring this together in Tableau and have really nice kind of single pane of glass dashboards showing things about social media activity, impacts of various programs that we run, and are able to make better decisions and faster decisions based on having this. So that's pretty cool, right? From the self-service community, we're really impressed constantly by what they're able to develop. But I don't want to make it seem like the corporate team is just kind of sitting back doing nothing. We're doing our own stuff too. So let's talk about that a little bit. So obviously what I said before about these service offerings, that's been huge. The fact that we can give teams options now of, do you want something that we develop for you from soup to nuts, or I guess from beans to lattes and cappuccinos? Or do you want to get your hands on the data yourself, and then you can build what you need? So this service offering, like I showed, is helpful for them, but is also helpful for us because it frees up our time to do some of these next things. So another thing that we've done is to develop and disseminate a standardized dashboard template. So this has been really, really helpful for consistency, for ease of use, and to make sure that teams out there that are doing their own thing with Tableau, they might not have a designer, and they can then leverage what we've done to make their stuff look good and function well. Next thing is an example of what I think is a really cool innovation that we did. It's called the Employee Backpack. If anyone happened to be at the Gartner Catalyst conference, two of my team members presented this in detail. But what this is we created a custom web page in our SharePoint, and we actually embed Tableau into it. And this is what actually drove our user numbers to that 28,000, because everyone in the firm has access to this. And it's a little bit untraditional, right? Like, it's not a dashboard that you use for analysis, but it's a dashboard that delivers data in a very user-friendly, intuitive sort of way. And what it shows users is essentially what corporate assets they have assigned to them. So whether that's laptops, or in this case, we also have a screenshot for software, but it also could be, payment cards and badges. They can see that data, and it's in a very nice, easy to understand package. And this is all the middle parts here are being powered by Tableau. The logic on the back end, we did it with Alteryx, and it's all embedded into our corporate SharePoint environment. So it's a really nice synergy of a couple of different corporate capabilities. Now, this led to this next thing that I'm about to show, and that's, I think, where we're really starting to get fancy, right? So we're rolling out what we're calling for now this BI portal. And the BI portal kind of takes this embedding functionality into the next level. So you can see in the screenshot that's kind of in the background, instead of accessing Tableau server directly or maybe going to a link, you go to a custom-built portal site that my team's developed. And what you're able to do, you're able to favorite different dashboards, search and filter. You're able to get more context about those dashboards. And we can also pull in things that are not just exclusively Tableau, right? The screenshot in the foreground, that one is an example of how we then embed individual dashboards into the portal pages. Once you click something from the gallery, we can add more context and tools around it. So you see there's a toolbar, these kind of bubbles around the right-hand side of that page. Some of those replicate built-in Tableau capabilities, like adding custom views, for example, but we put a new interface on top of it. So it's a little bit more user-friendly, kind of looks more like an app, less like using Tableau server directly. But we also add new functionality. Like, one of our requirements for an application was a really detailed export that goes beyond the capabilities of what Tableau is able to do. So using our custom development and tying in with the Alteryx API, we're able to have a button that you can push right from that dashboard that will launch off into an Alteryx workflow and will generate a data export that meets the requirements of that particular application. So using these embedded APIs and these other tools, we're really able to do some very cool and very useful things with Tableau. And lastly, I want to get back around to the power of the community. So this is a little bit more recent, but we've been working on deploying our Tableau user groups and our community of excellence within the firm more formally. We've had virtual meetings. We have Yammer, if you guys have that within your organization, Slack channels, MS Teams. And it's really for folks to feel more connected with what's going on with Tableau. Even if they're not working with it directly, or they're not on a corporate team, or they're not on an analyst team, they can be a part of what's going on and kind of keep up with us. And we've had a lot of engagement here, and we've also had a lot of external community engagement with the Tableau community, right? We've had external, the DC Tug, for example, we've hosted within our spaces, and that was a great information exchange. We've had 2 folks on my team who had their Vizes selected for Viz of the Day in Tableau Public. We had an intern that became a Tableau student ambassador. So our team is really getting out there in the community, both internal and external, and that's really helping to promote adoption of the platform. So I'm getting near the end of the presentation here and the end of my time. So I want to circle back around kind of to what we were talking about before, right? When we first started, we said, what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? And so having been on both sides of that equation, my recommendation is don't be the immovable object, right? Make sure that you're constantly reassessing and reevaluating what you have in your environment. Listen to kind of the pulse of the community and what will allow you to leverage that the most. And I think this quote probably sums things up the best, and that's, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so at Booz Allen, we've chosen to go far together using Tableau. And I encourage all of you, whether you're on the business side or you're on the corporate side, coming out of this conference, think about what going far together looks like in your company. Thank you.